Hi folks, it's Friday, and today we're looking at the music of the legend Bob Dylan. Now, my first Bob Dylan album was 1968, Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits. A good intro into the world of Bob Dylan. It covered music from 1962 through 1966 when he put out 7 albums. So quite a lot of material out in a very short time. We're looking at the albums Bob Dylan, Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, Times They Are A-Changin', Another Side of Bob Dylan, Bring It All Back Home, Highway 61 Revisited, and the classic Blonde on Blonde. So this is the period prior to the motorcycle accident and the break that he took in his recording. So a lot of early material, but a lot of classics. Give you an idea what's on here. We're looking at Rainy Day Women, Blowin' in the Wind, Times They Are A-Changin', It Ain't Me Babe, Like a Rolling Stone, Mr. Tambourine Man, Subterranean Homesick Blues, I Want You, Just Like a Woman, and a song that hadn't appeared on the album before, Positively 4th Street. I mean, great intro into the world of what Bob Dylan was all about. For me, I think the first song I had really heard of his or recognized as being his was Rainy Day Women. Heard it on the radio one time, and that piqued my curiosity enough to check him out. Certainly a follow-up to this, or a great one to go hand in hand with it, is Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits Volume 2. Again, drawing back from some of the older albums. We've got things like Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, Stuck Inside a Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. A couple here from Nashville Skyline. Lay Lady Lay, I'll Be Your Baby Tonight. Well, no, I'll Be Your Baby Tonight from John Wesley Harding. Tonight I'll Be Staying Here With You. All on the Watchtower from John Wesley Harding. Mighty Quinn from that dreaded album Self-Portrait, which, I mean, if you know it, you know what I'm talking about. Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. He kind of crossed a lot of material from those early albums, a few more songs, plus some of the ones after he came back. Now, what's also nice on here, we've got a tune, Watching the River Flow, and When I Paint My Masterpiece, 2 of them produced by Leon Russell, who you may recall had performed with Joe Cocker during his Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour and on some of his albums. And Leon Russell had also recorded with Willie Nelson. Well, he's got a couple of songs on this album that he produced, and these were ones that hadn't appeared on other albums as well. And we've got 3 other songs here, I Shall Be Released, Ain't Going Nowhere, and Down in the Flood, that I don't believe were on any of the previous albums. So you got a couple of new tunes in here, as well as some classics that were drawn from the same album that Greatest Hits came from, but just different songs off there. And 2 album set, and again, this, in conjunction with these 2 albums, a great introduction to the music of Bob Dylan. Now, I mentioned about him taking a break after Blonde on Blonde. He'd had a motorcycle accident, was out of recording for a while, and when he came back, it wasn't really the same music. It wasn't really the same Bob Dylan. Things had changed. John Wesley Harding, the songs were shorter. They were a whole different style in his writing. Then we went on to Self-Portrait, which people could say it was misunderstood, but a lot of people just found it wasn't the Bob Dylan they wanted. It really wasn't the album. And it was probably one of his least favorite ones. Now, after that, he came along in the mid-70s with another album that kind of brought things back. Some of the people that were disillusioned with Self-Portrait felt that he was coming back into his own style and back to the Bob Dylan they knew with the album New Morning. Now, New Morning also had the song on here. First song on it, If Not For You, was one he wrote in conjunction with George Harrison and appeared on George Harrison's first solo album, All Things Must Pass. Now, also on here, we've got a couple of key players that showed up. David Bromberg, which I'm not sure if you know of him yet, but we will talk about him in a couple of weeks, playing electric guitar and dobro. He was a session musician doing work with Bob Dylan, but also a great player in his own right. And we'll look at some of his albums, like I say, a couple of weeks down the road. Al Kooper on this album as well. And if you remember, we mentioned Al Kooper back during the Blood, Sweat, and Tears segment, where he was one of the original founders of the original Blood, Sweat, and Tears, did the first album with him. This one to me was really a very good album. Since the comeback, I didn't really care for Nashville Skyline, certainly Self-Portrait. Get back to this. This was back to the Dylan I was looking for. Now, he had a couple other albums in that same time period, but to me, the masterpieces, the ones he did in the mid-70s, there were two albums that to me really were landmark albums for him. One of them, and these I don't have on album, I bought them on 8-track, and of course my car is eating the 8-track tapes and they've disappeared, so I've got my CD versions, Blood on the Tracks. And this is just a classic album, a small group, and every song's a gem on here. I'll give you some idea what we're looking at. Tangled Up in Blue, Simple Twist of Fate, Idiot Wind, You're Gonna Make Me Lonesome When You Go, Meet Me in the Morning, Lily Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts, If You See Her Say Hello, Shelter from the Storm. Classic stuff. And it came at the time after he'd had some moderate success with New Morning, but this was one that really brought him back into the limelight. It was followed by another album the next year called Desire. And this album, a couple of songs he performed a lot. One More Cup of Coffee, Oh Sister, Sarah, Isis. These two albums I really see as landmark albums in his career, as well as everything he did up till the break at Blonde on Blonde. These are two that really stood out in the 70s, and for me even in the 80s. Nothing matched what he was doing on these albums. Now, you know, if you've watched the show, I love the live albums, and what could be better than live Bob Dylan? And what could be better than live Bob Dylan that featured some of the songs from these albums? So he put out a live album called Hard Rain. Now, Hard Rain had a very diverse set list. We're looking at Maggie's Farm from way back in the 1960s. One Too Many Mornings, Stuck Inside a Mobile with Memphis Blues Again from the Blonde on Blonde session. Oh Sister from here, Shelter on the Storm from Blood on the Tracks, Idiot Wind. If you've listened to the Blood on the Tracks, and I'm going to say Idiot Wind especially, that's one that really stands out, and you've heard the version he had on there, it's kind of a laid-back country version, very simple, very straightforward. When he did it on Hard Rain, it had changed 100%. This was a very energized, raw edge, cutting version compared to what you'd heard on the Blood on the Tracks. It was hard to imagine how this album, and taking some simple songs like Maggie's Farm and Oh Sister, You're a Big Girl Now, Threw It All Away, what he did. And like I say, it's very raw, it's very hard edge, it's really exciting album. This is one I had not only on 8-track, had it on cassette, obviously I got it on CD, I have it on digital download on my iPod now. It's one that I always come back to. And one of the great things about Bob Dylan, and I've seen him a couple times live, and I've got another one of his here, I'll just show you while I'm talking about it, was Bob Dylan Budokan, which I found was a really good album. I know at the time they weren't really interested in releasing it and didn't think it was going to be released in the US and weren't really happy, but I'll tell you, it was really good. And what's nice about Bob Dylan is, even though he's doing old songs, he's always changing them. I don't think I've, on any of the live albums or the times I've seen him live, sure he's played some of those same songs, but they've been different every time. And I think that's maybe how he keeps himself interested in what he's doing, because he's constantly on tour. But he's always, the songs are always evolving. They're always something different. I had a few times where I really wasn't even sure what I was listening to till I caught the words and realized, yes, that's the song he's doing, because the arrangement was so different from what I've been used to hearing. So if you get a chance to see him, take it. I mean, you never know what you're going to see. The material he does is old favorites, some brand new ones, but he always does them in a new way, always keeping them fresh and exciting. So for my money, the two greatest hits albums, a good place to start. The two classic albums out of the 1970s, Desire and Blood on the Tracks. And for live albums, take a chance, try out Hard Rain. It's not like anything I've ever heard him do before. A very good album and one of my favorites. So thanks for stopping by. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday when we'll be back looking at jazz. Stay home, stay safe. We'll see you on Monday.